morning everyone, and welcome to our Stukeley reading assembly. For each other we, every day we, to improve we, together we will. Every single Stukeley day we focus on. Our Stukeley motto is, our Stukeley curriculum is, and 4 words that make the magic happen. Yes. You'll notice that I slowed that down a little bit today. Mr. Watley got very cross with me yesterday and said it's too fast, and even he couldn't keep up. I said, "What's new, Mr. Watley?" Ha 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 ha. Yeah. Okay, anyway, welcome to Reading Assembly. We've been reading Charles Dickens over the past few months. We started, I think, back in September. We did most of those in school together. And then while we've been on lockdown and schools have been closed, we have read the final Charles Dickens book. There are lots more, but we're going to read 5, which we have already done. Today, we're going to start a brand new author. And it's a lady called Jane Austen. Now, if you're at home, you could ask your family if they've heard of Jane Austen. If you're in school, have a quick look at the adults in your room, and they will have heard of Jane Austen, I'm sure. She was a famous author, a famous writer, and she lived in the time before Charles Dickens. In fact, I need to check, but I think she died at about the same kind of time that Charles Dickens was born. Anyway, I need to do some research. So she was born and wrote about the Georgian era. So not the Victorians, that was Dickens. Jane Austen wrote about the Georgian times. That's when the kings were called George, basically. So we're going to start in a moment a Jane Austen story. I've got 4 here. May as well just show you these. Remember, these are the abridged versions. These are the short versions of some very long stories, novels. So Jane Austen wrote Pride and Prejudice. If your families haven't read it, they've probably watched the adaptation on the television. Northanger Abbey, which I think was published after she died, I think. Emma, another famous story. And then Sense and Sensibility. So I'm not sure which one we're going to start with. I'm going to make my mind up after we've learned a little bit about Jane Austen. I've told you a bit. Now we're going to look at a graphic organizer or a diagram, just like our Charles Dickens one, with information about Jane Austen. Let's try and get it into our schema. Come on. Jane Austen is easily one of the best British authors of all time. Her and Charles Dickens are always on people's lists of our best ever authors, and I think they always will be. She was born before the Victorian time, so she was born, think, about 40 years before Charles Dickens was. These were called the Georgian times because the kings at the time were all Georges, and I believe that Jane Austen died a few years after Charles Dickens was born. So there's a little bit of a crossover, but they won't have ever met each other. And actually, as you'll find out over the next few weeks, Charles Dickens would have probably heard of Jane Austen after she died. And I will explain that over the next few weeks. Anyway, there we go. Born 1775, just before the Victorian times came along. There she is. That is a portrait of her. That is a painting. The reason it's a painting is because cameras were not taking photos. They weren't invented when she was born. So we do not have any photographs of Jane Austen. We just have portraits, we have paintings of her. We're going to talk about her as a lady and as an author. And all we're going to do today is focus on some facts about her as a lady. So we're going to talk about when she was born, we're going to talk about her writing, and we're going to talk about 7 of something. You could probably work this out. She was born in 1775 in Georgian times. She wrote lots as a teenager. In fact, I think when she was 12 or 13 years old, she started to write poems and short stories and novellas. And it wasn't long before she was actually writing novels, much longer books. And she had 7 siblings. That means she had 7 brothers and sisters. Now, that's all we're going to do today. Just going to learn about her as a person, her as a lady, born way back when, prolific writer, did lots and lots of writing when she became old enough to do that, and a busy family. Right, so I've had a little look at these Jane Austen books, these abridged books. They're all quite interesting to me, but this one I'm going to start off with, Northanger Abbey. And it was a book that Jane Austen wrote, but unfortunately she died before it was published, so it only came out after her death. We'll have a quick check of the blurb, just to get us in the mood for it. So, the time has come for an unlikely heroine to have a real adventure. Now, a heroine is a lady hero. Catherine Morland has little experience of the world. When a neighbour takes her to visit the fashionable city of Bath, her naivety leaves her vulnerable. Who should Catherine trust? Whose friendship is genuine and whose will be harmful? Catherine's adventure becomes sinister. That means a little bit creepy. When she visits Northanger Abbey, what is hidden in the locked cabinet? Why are the general's children afraid of him, and what terrible secrets does he keep in his dead wife's bedroom? Guided only by the gothic horror stories she so loves reading, Catherine stumbles through her adventures. Will hers be a happy ending? Will she find a hero to share her happily ever after? Right, I am gripped already. Let's go. To be a true heroine, a girl must be beautiful and brave. She needs a wicked stepmother, like poor Cinderella, or a cruel father who locks her in a dark tower, or at least something that requires her to show her true mettle. Our heroine, however, is different, perhaps even unique. Catherine Morland's appearance, like her name, was not likely to catch anybody's attention. Lively and playful as a child, Catherine did not pass lonely days gazing longingly through dusty windows, awaiting her handsome prince. Instead, she spent her childhood rolling down the green slope outside her house and playing happily with her 9 brothers and sisters. Most surprisingly of all, Catherine's parents, in spite of having so many children to care for, were not only still living, but were happy and healthy. Although they were not very rich, neither were they very poor, and within the means available to them, they loved all their children equally. However great the temptation must sometimes have been, they'd never locked a child in a tower or sold a single baby to a passing witch. Having survived unscathed to the age of 17, Catherine was ready to seek adventure. Her only experience of the world consisted of the small community around her parents' home and the worlds she imagined as she sat enthralled by her books. That means she loved books.
No hero had ever galloped up to her house or leapt from the pages of her book. Even Catherine's parents agreed that the time had come for their daughter to experience new places and new faces. When their neighbour, Mrs. Allen, offered to take Catherine to the fashionable city of Bath for a few weeks, everybody was delighted. As Catherine sat in the carriage ready to depart, her mother gave her advice which would be valuable for any heroine setting out on her first adventure. Make sure you keep account of the money you spend. Catherine nodded, kissed her parents and turned her eyes towards Bath. Bath's pump rooms were the place to see and be seen. Understanding that a heroine ought to make a strong first impression, Mrs. Allen was very particular about the gown Catherine should wear for her first appearance. Therefore, on her first full day in Bath, the finely dressed Catherine stepped wide-eyed into the bustling lower rooms. Astonishingly, silence did not fall upon the crowd, and no gentleman gazed in rapturous wonder. One man, yawning, did comment to his friend that a girl who was almost pretty had just entered the room. Almost unnoticed and almost pretty, our heroine took the first tentative steps into society. Poor Catherine was overwhelmed by the largest crowd of people she had ever seen. Now, I know that's a comma. We wouldn't normally stop there, but it kind of makes sense too. So, what have we got? Catherine has arrived in Bath. She's an ordinary lady. She's looking for a bit of adventure. Hasn't really mixed with other people much before. And you'll probably work out that she is going to spend time or hang out in places where men and ladies are kind of looking to maybe start relationships or get to know each other and meet and greet each other. And they're in the Georgian times, when the ladies had a certain role and the men had a certain role, there was lots and lots of pressure for people to fall in love. And there was lots of pressure, especially for the ladies, to look glamorous all of the time. Right, we'll leave it there until next week.